25 minutes before 7 here on Morning Live, just to tell you what's coming up in the next hour. You don't want to miss this. It's a reunion of some sort, but a very difficult one, to put it that way. This is the book that we're going to be looking at. It's called Brutal Legacy. Tracy Going. You know Tracy Going. She started this program many, many years ago. I think we're heading into 20 years that Morning Live has been on air, or close to that. And Tracy Going was with Voyambuli when this program started. She has written a book about her life and her life of abuse. It's a very, very heart-wrenching read, and it's something that certainly is worth looking at and worth hearing the story of. So do stay tuned, and Tracy, our guest in the next hour, live on Morning Live. All right, let us now turn our attention to the news. And of course, the story of listeriosis continues. Victims of listeriosis, or the surviving families of those who have succumbed to the deadly outbreak, can claim for damages, but it will not be easy, as they have to provide evidence of where they bought the food items from, as well as when they consumed it. The Consumer Protection Act states that the victim can sue any party in the chain of supply. This includes the manufacturer, the importer, the distributor, or the retailer, but only if evidence is provided. This comes after the Minister of Health announced on Sunday that the source of the deadly listeriosis outbreak was traced back to the Enterprise Food Factory in Polokwane. Now, since then, Tiger Brands refused to take responsibility for the outbreak and says there are no proven links between their enterprise products and the fatalities. Joining us from our parliamentary studio now is Johann Roux, the head of medical malpractice at DSC Attorneys. Johann, good to have you on the program. Thanks very, very much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on the show.
Now, I mean, it sounds like a rather difficult task for the victims or those that have their surviving families and those that perhaps are ill due to listeriosis to actually prove it. I mean, supplying the details where you bought it, when you consumed it. I mean, how difficult is this to actually start with a lawsuit?
It would be quite challenging. I think the good news for the potential claimants in this matter is that they've identified a very specific strand of this bacteria, which they then could trace back to that factory. So this is where this new technology with genome testing has been quite useful. So although it would be difficult, I think it's certainly possible to prove a claim in this case.
Yeah. I mean, I'm reading articles basically saying that this could see the biggest class action lawsuit following listeriosis. I mean, we've got 181 deaths, and we're sitting with 948 confirmed cases. I mean, these are huge numbers.
Yeah, it would certainly be quite a big claim. Not as big as the possible action that they're bringing against the mine companies. They're talking about a number of potential claimants from 17,000 up to 500,000 potential claimants. But this listeriosis one is also quite a big one then.
Yeah. If we have to look at what the Consumer Protection Act actually says, talk us through it. I mean, instances such as this, the outbreak of listeriosis, and of course, as you mentioned in the beginning, it has been traced back to Enterprise Food Factory in Polokwane.
Yeah, I think the Consumer Protection Act has made it easier for the potential claimants to claim in this situation. In the past, you would have to go and identify the exact source and then prove negligence on their part. Now, with the Consumer Protection Act, you can sue anyone in the chain, starting from the importer to the manufacturer, the distributor, or the retailer. You can go and choose which one you'd like to institute a claim against. And you would not need to prove negligence on their part. You just need to prove the link between the product that you used as a consumer and the damage that you suffered eventually.
Yeah. I mean, if we look at the stance that Enterprise is taking, or should I say, a Tiger Brands, I mean, they really are being quite insistent that they are not taking any responsibility. And I mean, this is obviously lawyer talking, isn't it? I mean, you cannot accept responsibility because there again, I mean, this is just opening the door for every lawsuit, a class action that you can think of.
Yeah, I think this is going to come up to loggerheads quite soon. You know, it's either the department is wrong or Enterprise is wrong, and it's going to have massive consequences for whoever turns out to be wrong in this situation.
Can those who have fallen ill due to listeriosis after consuming it already to eat, you know, can they claim for medical bills? I mean, can they at least do that?
Yeah, there's various things that you can look at, and if you do bring a claim, eventually there's quite a few things that you could claim for potentially. You could claim for the medical costs, but you could also claim for loss of earnings that you suffered and pain and suffering. If the patient passed away, the family could also do a loss of support claim against the manufacturer.
Yeah. All right. So let's have a look at something called, and this is our law talk coming in, so we're going to get our law lesson from you. Delictual claims. What is it? I mean, I've got a brief understanding of what it's all about, but are there claims that could fit under this particular claim?
A delictual claim is where you go and sue someone for damages because you say that they were negligent.
Yeah.
So just very briefly, negligence is if you say someone could have foreseen damage occurring and they did not then take reasonable steps to prevent it. So in a case like this, you'd foresee that selling contaminated food could be detrimental to people's health, and you then have to put measures in place to make sure that food is not contaminated. And from all accounts, it appears that there were not sufficient safeguards in place to prevent this.
If it is found that Enterprise Foods are actually guilty for the fatalities and injuries of those affected by listeria, what could the compensation look like? I mean, what amounts are we looking at? I suppose it's different to every case, but I mean, we spoke in the beginning about this possibly being one of the largest lawsuits. Obviously, mining is also a massive one, but how big could this be?
It would differ from patient to patient, depending on what the extent is of the medical expenses that they incurred, what expenses they are likely to incur in the future, and then also if you look at the income that they might have lost during this stage. So, you know, I assume that people across the social spectrum were affected, so you'd get some people who did not earn a lot, but you could also maybe have had some high income earners who then have a bigger claim.
Yeah, yeah. Just, Johann, give us a little bit of advice. I mean, if there is somebody watching, they have got listeriosis, or one of their family members has got, or they have actually died from listeriosis, what do they do? What are the steps they should take if, in fact, they would like to go the legal route?
I think it's important to contact attorneys as soon as possible. There are certain time limits within which you can bring a claim. And, you know, the investigations and the processes that you need to follow are quite cumbersome. So the earlier you can start with it, the better. And I think then also maybe just keep an eye on the news to see if a possible class action is brought. And then those details will be distributed and made public. And then they can contact whichever law firm is bringing that class action to maybe join in on it. Yeah.
Just two quick questions. Time limits. What is the time frame on something like this?
Generally, there's a 3-year time limit from when you become aware of the fact that you've been infected and it was due to this contamination at the factory. So you're looking at about a 3-year period then to bring a claim in.
Yeah. Okay. And then just finally, I mean, the eventuality of lawsuits or a class action, I mean, do you see a massive case here? Do you see it coming?
Definitely, I do see it coming. I think the law is changing. People are now looking at class actions, and consumers are becoming more aware of their rights. And if there was shortcomings at the factory in Polokwane or any other factory, then there should be consequences.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for helping us understand this and talking about class actions, lawsuits that could possibly come from this listeriosis outbreak and the deaths as well. Johann Roux is the head of medical malpractice at DSC Attorneys. Human Rights Month ends.